Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we're going to discuss a subject that has been debated for many years, not with emotions, not with assumptions, and certainly not with insults. Instead, we are going to examine one of the most important historical texts in the Nuseri Ismaili tradition and ask a simple question: what does it actually teach about the living Imam? This video is not about attacking ordinary Ismailis. Many Ismailis are sincere people. They love their families. They care about their community. Many may never have studied the older Farmans in detail. Our purpose is not to question anyone's sincerity. It's to understand the doctrine itself, because sincerity and doctrine are two different things. A sincere person can still inherit beliefs without ever examining where those beliefs came from. That is why every Muslim is encouraged to seek knowledge, to read, to think, and to compare every belief with the Qur'an. That is exactly what we're going to do today. To understand the doctrine of the living Imam, we need to study one of the most important historical Ismaili texts, Kalam-e-Imam-e-Mubin. This collection contains Farmans attributed to Aga Khan III, Sultan Muhammad Shah. For generations, these Farmans have played a central role in explaining the doctrine of Imamat within the Nuseri Ismaili tradition. Rather than relying on second-hand opinions, we're going to let these Farmans speak for themselves. Then, after understanding what they teach, we will compare those teachings with the Qur'an, because every Muslim believes the Qur'an is the final and complete criterion for truth. Most Muslims think of an imam as someone who leads the prayer, teaches religion, and guides the community. But as we begin reading Kalam-e-Imam-e-Mubin, we quickly discover that the doctrine presented here goes much further than that. The imam is not presented simply as a teacher. He is presented as the center of an entire spiritual system. To understand that system, we first need to understand one word, Noor. The Arabic word Noor simply means light. But in Kalam-e-Imam-e-Mubin, Noor is presented as far more than ordinary light. It is described as an eternal spiritual reality. Let's turn to one of the earliest Farmans. In Farman No. 2, delivered in 1885, we find one of the most important explanations of the doctrine of Imamat. The Farman explains that although the physical body of the Imam changes from generation to generation, the Noor never changes. The body is compared to clothing. A person may change clothes, but the person inside remains the same. In the same way, the Farman teaches that while the physical body of each Imam may change, the Noor remains one and the same. This teaching is often described as a Kaj Noor, one light. According to the Farman, there is no difference between the Noor carried by one Imam and the Noor carried by another. The bodies belong to different periods of history. The names are different. The personalities are different. But the Noor is presented as eternal and unchanged. Now let's pause here, because this is where the doctrine begins. If the Noor never changes and every Imam carries that same Noor, then according to these teachings, today's Imam is not simply following Hazrat Ali. He is understood to carry the very same eternal Noor associated with Hazrat Ali. That single belief changes everything. From this point onward, the Imam is no longer understood simply as a successor. He is presented as the living continuation of the same eternal spiritual reality. This becomes the foundation upon which the rest of the doctrine is built. Think about it carefully. If the Imam carries the same eternal Noor, then the relationship between the believer and the Imam also changes. The believer is no longer simply following a religious teacher. He believes he is connected to an eternal Noor that has continued from Imam to Imam throughout history. Without understanding Noor, the rest of the Farmans cannot be fully understood. But once this doctrine is accepted, the next question naturally follows: how do these Farmans explain that this Noor is divine? That question leads us to one of the most discussed narratives in Kalam-e-Imam-e-Mubin, a narrative found in Farman No. 18, one that introduces the title Ali Allah. Let's now turn to Farman No. 18, delivered in 1893. The setting is the River Furat. According to the Farman, Hazrat Ali encounters a group of believers who address him with the words Ali Allah. This immediately tells us the Farman is introducing an important theological question: who is Hazrat Ali being presented as? To answer that, the Farman continues with a remarkable narrative. According to the Farman, Hazrat Ali decides to test the faith of one of these believers. The narrative says the man is killed, then restored to life. Afterward, Hazrat Ali asks him about his belief. The man remains firm. According to the narrative, Hazrat Ali continues testing him, and the believer is subjected to death in different ways. described as being cut into pieces and later restored to life. Each time, his conviction only grows stronger. Finally, the narrative reaches its central conclusion. The believer declares that the one who gives life and takes life is Allah. This is one of the most important narratives in Kalam-e-Imam-e-Mubin because it connects the miracle directly with the title Ali Allah. Let's pause and think. Our purpose is not simply to repeat the story. The important question is why this narrative is included. Every religious narrative teaches something. So what belief is this Farman trying to establish? The miracle itself isn't the final goal. It functions as evidence supporting a much larger theological claim. The believer's certainty doesn't come from philosophical argument. It comes from witnessing what he understands to be absolute authority over life and death. Now let's compare this with the Qur'an. Throughout the Qur'an, one message appears again and again. Allah alone gives life. Allah alone causes death. Allah alone controls creation and possesses absolute authority over existence. Even when Allah granted miracles to his prophets, the Qur'an repeatedly reminds us those miracles occurred only by Allah's permission. The miracle never made the prophet divine. It pointed people toward Allah. That distinction matters, because here we are asking a different question. What conclusion does this Farman invite the believer to reach? By now, we've seen two important teachings. The first Farman explained that the Noor is eternal. The second presents a miracle narrative connected with the title Ali Allah. Together, these begin to form a pattern. The doctrine is no longer speaking only about succession. It presents the Imam as the bearer of an eternal Noor whose authority is demonstrated through miracle narratives, but the Farmans don't stop there. They now ask, what does perfect faith look like? To answer that, Kalam-e-Imam-e-Mubin introduces a man named Nuseri. Within Farman No. 2, we find the story of Nuseri, who according to the Farman openly declared Hazrat Ali to be Allah. The Farman narrates that Hazrat Ali repeatedly tested him, and no matter how severe the test became, Nuseri never withdrew his belief. He continued calling Hazrat Ali Allah. The Farman presents this unwavering belief as the highest example of faith. The narrative then describes something even more remarkable. According to the Farman, Nuseri is not only praised for his faith, extraordinary spiritual rewards are described as connected to it, extending beyond Nuseri himself to include his descendants. This is one of the most striking parts of the Farman because the emphasis isn't simply on loyalty. It's on recognizing Hazrat Ali in a very specific way. The Farman presents that recognition as the defining characteristic of the true believer. Let's pause again and notice how the doctrine is developing. First, the Farmans teach one eternal Noor. Then they present miracle narratives connected with Hazrat Ali. Now they introduce a believer whose unwavering recognition of Hazrat Ali is presented as the highest example of faith. These are not isolated stories. They build upon one another. Each Farman adds another layer to the same theological framework, and slowly, a complete picture begins to emerge. Now let's move to another important Farman, Farman No. 80, delivered in 1903. Here, the Farman narrates the story of a young man who traveled from Yemen to meet Hazrat Ali. When he arrived, he made an unusual statement. According to the Farman, he told Hazrat Ali, "I do not see you the way other Muslims see you." The narrative explains that he recognized Hazrat Ali as his God. The Farman then records Hazrat Ali's response. According to the teaching presented, someone may remain physically close to the Imam every day and yet still be spiritually distant. At the same time, someone living far away, even in another land, may be spiritually close because of the faith held in his heart. On the surface, this appears to be about distance, but when we look more carefully, it's really about recognition. The Farman teaches that physical closeness to the Imam is not the most important thing. What matters is recognizing the Imam's true spiritual status. That teaching would have been especially meaningful as the Ismaili community spread across different countries, since followers might never meet the Imam personally. Yet the Farman teaches they could remain spiritually connected through belief. At this point, we've studied several important Farmans. Farman No. 2 teaches the continuity of the Noor. Farman No. 18 presents miracle narratives associated with Hazrat Ali. The story of Nuseri presents unwavering recognition as the highest example of faith. Farman No. 80 emphasizes that spiritual closeness depends on recognizing the Imam's true status. When these teachings are read together, they form a clear doctrinal pattern, each Farman supporting the next, each narrative reinforcing the one before it, together presenting a complete understanding of the Imamat. Every doctrine eventually affects worship. Every belief shapes how a believer approaches Allah. So now we must ask, what does this doctrine mean for everyday religious life? If the Imam carries the eternal Noor, if he's understood through these miracle narratives, if recognizing him is presented as the highest form of faith, then when a believer makes dua, who becomes the focus of spiritual hope? Who becomes the source of forgiveness? Who becomes the center of religious devotion? These questions take us beyond history to the heart of Islamic belief, because from this point forward, the discussion is no longer simply about the Imam. It becomes a discussion about Tawheed itself. Imagine a believer facing a difficult moment in life. Perhaps he's ill, perhaps his family is struggling, perhaps he's asking forgiveness after making mistakes. Like every believer, he turns toward God, asking for mercy, guidance, and help. Now ask yourself, according to the doctrine we've been studying, where is that spiritual hope directed? Throughout the Farmans we've studied, the Noor is presented as one eternal reality. The physical body changes, the Noor does not. If the present Imam carries the same eternal Noor, then the spiritual relationship between the believer and the Imam is understood to continue in every generation. The Imam is not viewed simply as a teacher. He becomes the living representative of that eternal Noor. This is why the doctrine of Noor occupies such a central place in the Ismaili understanding of Imamat. When the teachings on Noor, miracle narratives, and recognition of the Imam are combined, they create a particular understanding of religious life, one in which the Imam is not simply respected, but becomes the central point of spiritual authority. Now let's turn to the Qur'an. The Qur'an repeatedly reminds believers that Allah alone possesses absolute authority. Allah alone created the heavens and the earth. Allah alone gives life. Allah alone causes death. Allah alone forgives sins. Allah alone hears every prayer. Allah alone knows what is hidden within every heart. These qualities are not shared with anyone else. This is the foundation of Tawheed. Consider the prophets Allah chose. Prophet Nuh called people to worship Allah. Prophet Ibrahim called people to worship Allah. Prophet Musa called people to worship Allah. Prophet Isa performed miracles only by Allah's permission and called people to worship Allah. Finally, Prophet Muhammad, the seal of the prophets, spent 23 years delivering exactly the same message: worship Allah alone. Never once did he invite people to worship himself or ask believers to direct their prayers to him. Instead, he taught complete dependence upon Allah. That is the message repeated throughout the Qur'an. After studying these Farmans and reviewing the Quranic teaching on Tawheed, one question remains. Does the doctrine in Kalam-e-Imam-e-Mubin describe the Imam only as a spiritual guide, or do the combined teachings present him in a role that goes beyond guidance, as a manifest presence of God on earth? Every viewer should examine that question honestly, not emotionally, not politically, but sincerely. If you are an Ismaili watching this documentary, I sincerely thank you for staying until the end. This video was never intended to insult you, nor to question your sincerity. Most of us inherit our religion from our parents. Very few people are encouraged to study the original sources in depth. That is true in every religious community. My invitation to you is simple. Read the Farmans for yourself. Study them carefully. Read the Qur'an carefully. Compare both sincerely and ask questions without fear. Truth does not fear honest investigation. And to my fellow Muslims, we should always discuss religious differences with wisdom, knowledge, and respect. Our goal should never be to win arguments. Our goal should be to invite people toward Allah through good character, sound evidence, and sincere dialogue. The Quran teaches us to call people with wisdom and beautiful advice. That should always remain our method. Let us return to the very first question we asked at the beginning of this documentary. Who gives life? Who causes death? Who forgives sins? Who hears every prayer? For more than 1400 years, the answer given by the Quran has never changed. Allah alone. That is the message taught by every prophet. That is the message repeated throughout the Quran. That is the foundation of Tawheed. And that is the standard by which every doctrine, every tradition, and every belief should ultimately be measured. Whether you agree with this analysis or reach a different conclusion, I encourage you to do one thing: go back to the original sources, read them carefully, think deeply, and compare everything with the Quran, and ask Allah, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, to guide all of us to the truth, because sincere guidance comes from Him alone. May Allah increase us in knowledge. May He grant us wisdom. May He keep our hearts firm upon Tawheed. Ameen. If you found this documentary beneficial, please like, share, and subscribe. Together, let us continue seeking knowledge through original sources, respectful dialogue, and the light of the Qur'an. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.